Anywhere in the world, really. It's not difficult to do. Matter of fact, it's a little bit easier than some of the a little bit more complicated methods we use in freshwater fly tying, but it's a lot of fun. It'll give you the opportunity to expand your horizons, be able to go into fish areas that you've never even dreamed of before. Give it a go. Have a lot of fun. Good on you. I want to tell you a story. A few months ago, a friend of mine, Steve Cooper, who lives down in a sister city to Melbourne called Geelong. And out there's a lot of flats and shallow water, and he gets out there and he flicks a fly around like you wouldn't believe. But he came up to my place up here in the mountains, and he said to me, he says, I want to do a little bit of trout fishing. So we went and did some trout fishing, and we were using these little gold bead head nymphs, which most people in fly fishing would know just how deadly these things are. He said to me, I want to take a couple home. He said, I've got some little streams down around my place that I want to play with. So he did. He contacted me a couple of weeks later and said, I was out in Port Phillip Bay, which is a huge mass of water right on the shores of the city of Melbourne in Geelong, where Steve lives. And the variety of fish he was catching on simple gold bead head brown nymphs tied for trout is absolutely amazing.
Nice little garfish. See that, the little nymph? Just taking that like a beauty. Same rig as you use for trout. A nymph with a dry above it.
We got a fish over here that's like a long, skinny flounder. We call it a flathead. And the vast majority of them in the bay are pretty small, 12, 14 inches, that sort of thing. But we do get some big ones, up to 10, 12, 14, 16 pounds in weight. Huge critters. They were out there fishing in the boat. They had a little bit of a burley trail going, and they were sinking flies down, these little gold bead head nymphs, down into the sort of little fish that were hanging around the back of the boat. They just let one sink a little bit further, and one of these flathead took hold of it. 4 pounds in weight. Absolutely amazing. Steve got back to me, as I said, and he said, Mick, I want you to tie me up some gold beadhead nymphs for saltwater flies. And we did. We're going to start off tying some simple little flies, slowly getting a little bit more complicated. Don't let it worry you at this stage. You can grow into it. It's only practice. That's all it is. And it's not difficult. I say with friends of mine who want to take up fly tying, simply relate it this way. If you can sew on a button, you can tie a fly. It's really not much more difficult than that. So let's get into it. A little bit about the tools and some of the materials that we use. Okay, before we go any further, I want to have a quick chat to you about fly tying advice. Buy the best you can. Believe you me, it is worth it. Save up for it if you've got to. Get the shopkeeper to put it away. I don't care what. Just get the best you can. Let me explain about this one. This is a Dinah King made by Ron Abbey, and it's the professional model. I've had this one for about 12 years. Heavens knows how many flies I've tied on it. It just goes on and on and on and on. But the jaws are made in a manner where I can put little tiny hooks in there, size 22s, 20s. I can go right up to 3 and 4 O's and 6 O's in it. Let me just show you. I can open up the jaws. I can put that into the groove in the back of the jaw, close down the lever arm. Hear that noise? Hear that twang? That's telling me that that hook is in the vise firmly. Without even adjusting the head of the vise, I can take the hook out, put in a smaller one by putting it up closer to the end of the jaw, closing down. Hear that? There we go. I didn't even have to adjust the vise, and that's the value of a quality vise. You'll notice by simply adjusting the screw on the side of the vise here, I can now rotate the vise. This means that I can check the work on either side of the fly as I'm tying it to make sure that my proportions, my color combinations and materials are sitting correctly. Another thing I like about this particular vise is I can lift the stem up and down and adjust it at any height that I require. It's very, very important. You've got to be comfortable. You've got to adjust the vise to the height that suits you. If it's working down here, you're going to be struggling. Have it sitting there, good, comfortable height to work with. Play around. Find the distance that you require. I just want to show you something about how high the vise should be on the table. Let's put the hook back in. Let's put some thread on here for a sec. Simply wind that on. Pull it out to about a good working distance, which is 3.5 inches. That allows you to wind around, maintaining your tension as you go. Very important. If your silk's out so wide, as you wind around, you're going to lose tension. And the wraps of thread are going to be loose, and your materials can pull out. So make sure that you're right about the 2-3 inches away from the hook, that you can wind around with tension. Very, very important. Let that swing. See that? Plenty of room. If I drop that vise down, I'm still missing the table, but only just. A whisker lower, and I'm going to be in trouble. I'm going to be losing that tension as I wind around. That's something I don't want to do. All right, let's have a look at some of the other tools that we need to make this game a little bit easier. Firstly, we need some scissors, and we need some good scissors. I've got two types. I've got one here that we commonly call an iris scissor. This is for fine work. It also has a little serrated edge on it, so it allows you to grip the material as you're cutting. These are the arrow scissors. They're a little bit bigger, and they allow you to cut heavier duty material. They've got one feature that's very, very important. Let's see if we can get some light on that, because on that edge there, you'll see that the blade is serrated. These serrations allow the scissors to grip the material while it's being cut. Let me give you an example of this. I've got a little bit of calf tail here. We're just going to get these fibers sticking out off the back. Normally, without that serrated edge, the fibers will start to slip away on you all the time, but with a serrated edge, they just grip and cut through, just like that. I'll show you that again because it's worthwhile seeing. Let's put some out here. Here we go. It's just that serrated edge. Boom. Crisp, clean, and they really do the job well. You need two sizes of scissors. Spoil yourself on them and look after them. No cutting the toenails, no cutting the fingernails. Keep them for fly tying. Don't let the girls get hold of them unless they're tying flies. God bless. Okay, let's have a talk about some of the other tools that we need. Firstly, we need a bobbin holder. What's a bobbin holder? That's a little tool that holds the silk for you. The silk naturally is called the bobbin of silk. And isn't it amazing? They call this thing a bobbin holder. There's many different types. Here's another one. They're both very, very good. But there's one criteria that you look for, and that's the ceramic tube. Some of them have got little metal tubes on them, and the plain metal tubes, they can cut your thread, they get little burrs on them. Others out there have got little jewels placed in the top of the tube. Most of these are metal. They're excellent, don't get me wrong. One of those is the Griffin tools. Fabulous little bobbin holder. These are just pure ceramic tubes. And you can tie all day and they're not going to break your thread. Very, very important. The next item you need is a double. Quite simply a large sewing needle. You can get one out of the sewing box at home if you like, if you're allowed to. Or you can go and buy them. They're not expensive. And you don't need to spend a fortune on this sort of stuff. There's two things that I'd put my money into. Firstly, scissors. Make them the best you can buy. Secondly, bobbin holders. Do the same. Go for the best. Get the stuff that's not going to let you down. Dubbing needles like such, not very important. All you need to be able to do is have a sharp point on them, be long enough so that they can work and poke around at the fly as you wish. The next item we need is what we call a Matarelli type whip finishing tool. I'm going to have to show you how to do this. It's a little bit complicated, but it is the best of its kind because quite often when we're tying off on saltwater flies, we could be tying off well down the shank rather than at the eye. And this tool allows you to do that very, very easily. We'll come back to it. So really, that's all we need to get started with. Famous old saying of mine when in doubt, buy more tools. If you're still in doubt, buy more hooks. You can never have enough hooks. There's heaps of hooks out on the marketplace today, specifically designed for tying saltwater flies. Gamakatsu make a full range, as do mustard, as do dairiki. What you do, the simple way around it, is go and get a selection. Then you can select the hook to suit the fly you want to make. That's important. Spoil yourself a little bit. It's not going to hurt. You deserve it. Just before we get into the fly tying segment, there's one other little gizmo you've got to get yourself, and this is a rotary dryer. Once you've set your epoxy heads and this sort of stuff on your flies so that they dry nice and evenly and round, you simply get one of these little dryers. They run off batteries. You can get powered ones, which are barbecue motors. And as you can see, they just slowly rotate. And as your epoxy heads are drying, and there's a whole sequence on this in this video that'll show you how all that's done. You only need to leave it there for a few minutes, and you can take it off and hang it up somewhere to really get hard. Okay. One of the secrets with fly tying, actually it's the whole secret of fly tying. Fly tying is only methods and proportions. When your method matched with the proportions, that's the size of the material to suit the fly you're tying, you're going to come out with great looking flies. If we look at building flies like we do a box, and keep all the sides square and the lid fits on nice and tight, we can get some idea of what we've got to do. With flies, we use what we call the length of the shank as our governing factor. Now, the length of the shank starts directly behind the eye and finishes directly above your bob. Let's have a look at the components of a hook here. We've got the eye, we've got the shank coming down there, now we've got the bend coming around to the point, and the bob line, and then straight up from the bob, you'll see that's where the bend of the hook starts. That's our start of our shank. It goes from there right through to the eye. Now, when we build a body on our fly, if you have a look at this one, you'll see that that chartreuse-colored fishing nylon that I've used for the body starts directly above the bob of the hook. The length of the fibers of the arrow I've used on this streamer type fly here is approximately the same length coming out the back of the fly as what the length of the shank is. Keeps everything in proportion. The fly swims right, looks right, gives you a bit more confidence to fish it. I reckon that's fabulous. Just let me show you now some of the methods that we have to learn to be able to tie simple saltwater flies. Place your hook in your vise like so. Don't have the jaws jamming right up on the point of the hook. Have it sitting back in the vise so that everything's comfortable. It's locked in, you've got a laying. One of the first methods I want to show you is how tying silk on. Simply lay the bobbin holder, with the bobbin, naturally, over the hook itself so that it's hanging freely. With your offhand, hang on to your silk, hang on to your thread firmly. Bring it up and wrap it around this piece of thread. Slowly working back, slowly wrapping around. You only need 3 or 4 wraps, and that is as firm as you'll ever want. It's not going to come off, it'll break before it comes off, believe you me. Let me show you that again, it's quite simple. Place the bobbin over the backside of the hook, grab it, pull it towards you firmly, and wrap it over this piece of thread that you're onto with your free hand. Wind back to above your hook. You can use the bobbin as unbob, and you know you're starting in exactly the right place to form your body. The next movement you've got to learn is how to tie your thread off. Firstly, we'll just cut off that waist piece, and I'll wind the silk quickly. Always wind away from yourself. Makes it very, very easy, because you can see where you're layering that silk. If you get in the habit of winding towards you, your hand and everything else can get in the way. If you're winding away from yourself like that, you can always see where you're going, and you can end up with some great looking little layers, and everything's neat and tidy and everything else. Let's wind our silk directly up to the eye, neatly and clearly, as I've explained. We've got up to the top. What we're going to do is get a Matarelli style whip finishing tool. This is a piece of copper tubing over a little piece of stainless steel wire there. It's designed so that it'll rotate freely in your hand while you're rotating the rest of the mechanism here around the eye of the hook. Let me show you how it works. You need to watch this carefully. Open up your thread to maybe 4 or 5 inches. Place your hand on this little ball section there at the top of the copper tubing bit, just there like so. Place the hook on the thread, then wrap the thread around the bend of the whip finishing tool, swing it around so that you create that triangle. See the fulcrum point there? That's important because that's a tension area for us. Let's slide it up to the eye of the hook, and then we slowly wrap it around like so. 3 or 4 turns is enough for this exercise. We lift up. You may have noticed then that the thread just easily slipped off the bend. We're still holding it by the hook. Now we can still maintain our tension as we pull through so that everything remains firm on the hook. Slip it out, and that's one firm knot. Just to be on the safe side, let's do another one. Place it into the hook, wrap it around the bend section, swing it around away from you so that you form your triangle. At the same time, my fingers have slipped back down onto the copper tubing so that it rotates easy. Wind it around. 3 or 4 turns only will do. Lift up. Hang on to it right there with the hook section of your whip finishing tool. Pull cleanly through, maintaining your tension, slip it out, and there you go. One of the things I want to talk to you about just briefly are some of the tricks we use to add a little bit of life into a fly. Some of the lures you see out on the marketplace, they're just plain blobs of metal. They just shine and glitter through and away they go, and yeah, they catch fish. But with fly tying, hopefully we can give it a little bit more. And fly tyers say we call this a touch of life. We try to get a little bit more glint and a little bit more idea of movement into the flies that we're tying. And some of the materials that we use to help create this, firstly, is eyes. To me, the eyes show the soul, and that's very, very important. They show fear. And when a little school of minnow are darting all the way, darting around, getting away from those big fish that are chasing them, believe you me, those eyes are wide open, and they're staring, and they're very, very blank. To try and put this look, excuse the pun, but try and put this look into the fly you're trying to make really adds that little bit extra flavor. Very difficult to get any other way. That's why we've got all these plastic eyes here. They're stick-on plastic eyes. They come in all sorts of different sizes so that you can match the size of the fly that you wish to tie. You can even get these that are very, very similar. They've got a little epoxy resin over the top, just a little bit more lifelike. You can get doll's eyes, wiggle's eyes. You can get all sorts of eyes that you can build into your fly to be able to just give it that extra look. Other tricks we do, we use these flashy materials called crystal hair, crystal flash. There's 100 names for the same stuff out on the marketplace. I don't know, the manufacturers and the suppliers and distributors of this stuff, they must have a nightmare making up new names for it, but it's all very, very similar. You just buy it to suit the fly that you want to tie. You know, you're going to end up with a lot of fly tying and stuff after a while. There's no way around it. You know, when you're starting off, you can put it all into a small box, like a shoe box. But within a few months, or within 12 months, you've got a half a room full. I mean, it happens to us all. It's like collecting fishing rods, isn't it? If you can count them, you ain't got enough. And it's the same with fly tying materials. You just keep on adding and adding and adding to it. But that's the sport, that's the fun, and that's the hobby of what fly tying's all about. A little bit of flash built into your fly. Let me just talk about one of the little flies we've got here. Let's have a look at this beast. Now this has got a lot of life in this, really. It's got a very large stick-on eye. It's got all this crystal hair stuff, which is a blended colored one. But as you can see, we've just added a little bits over the back. It just creates that extra little bit of flash, an extra bit of life as the sun hits the skin of the little fish here and just reflects it and throws it around just to be able to create that little bit of life. big eyes standing out saying, hey, I'm in trouble, I got to get out of here real fast. It's good stuff. That's what it's for. Never overdo it. You just need a touch. Some flies I've seen are made totally of this. Yeah, they seem to work, but a fly that's designed a little bit closer to the natural, like a little sardine pattern, is going to do a lot more damage than what something full of flash is going to do. So think about it. When you're trying to imitate a little fish, imagine what that thing's going to look like. Imagine where you want to place your glittery fibers to create that little bit of life. As you can see, I've just laid them over the top here. And also remember, when you're building a little fish pattern, that they're always lighter underneath, working darker as you go towards the top. One of the best ways you can get for designing colors and this sort of stuff into your lures and your imitative baits is to have a look what the actual lure manufacturers have done, the way they've mixed and blend their colors. And those guys experiment and develop and experiment, and the color combinations they've got are just simply fabulous. There's no reason why you can't blend that into your flies using fur and feather. No reason at all. This is such a simple fly to tie. That's why I've chosen it to start as an introduction to what saltwater fly tying is all about. We're not going to actually tie up the brown seals for a nymph as you see it here. I did tie up for Steve some versions that we created with a little bit of colour in them. Now, I tied him up a whole series of these, and they've worked very, very well indeed. As I said, they're very, very simple to tie. You should be able to knock them up at your first effort without any troubles at all. The hook that I've selected for this is a stainless steel hook. It's made by Mustard. It's an O'Shaughnessy size 6. The number is 34044NPSS. What I like about it is it's got a wide enough bend on it to be able to have plenty of bite room and yet get one of these little gold bead heads over. Watch and I'll show you how it's done. These are gold bead heads. Amazing little things. You can. They've taken the world by storm in the last few years. They're putting them on all sorts of flies, from woolly buggers in the freshwater scene to nymphs in the freshwater scene, and now we've got them in the saltwater scene. They come in a various range of sizes, from very, very little right up to critters that are quite large, and they add a little bit of weight to the fly and help you get it down, as you'll see in another version shortly. What I'm going to select is a one around about the 4 mil in size. Now what you'll notice is, naturally there's a hole going right through the center of these beads, but one is larger than the other. The idea is when you place these beads on the hook is that you push the hook through the small hole first so that the wider hole allows it to come up around the bend of the hook. If you try and do it the opposite way, you're going to be struggling. It's just not going to happen for you. Let me show you how this is done. Grab one of the hooks. As I said, thread it through the smaller part of the smaller hole, and it'll just easily come around and sit there at the eye of the hook. You must put this on first before you start to tie your fly, otherwise you're not going to be able to get it on. The hole's too narrow to slip over the eye of the hook, so you've got to put it on first. Let's put the hook into the vise and start making this bug. I'm using a mono thread, which is, I'm not sure, it's like a nylon thread, but it's impervious to water and it'll last a little bit longer. Plus it's quite strong too. Let's just wind that on. Coming back to our starting point, which is directly above the barb, we can snip away the waste. What I'm going to tie in for a bit of a tail here is a little bit of calf tail. Cut a piece off, which will become the tail for this nymph. Snip a little bit off down the back end. You don't need very much. We don't want this tail to dominate the whole fly. Just get the fibers there. That's about enough. Just to be able to make it look like an extends the body a little bit, give it a little bit of feature, maybe balance the fly as it's swimming through. Place that on. Take the silk up between. 3 or 4 turns like that will lock it into place. We can then cut away the waist section and really tie in the butts that were remaining so that they remain very, very secure. Now I'm going to show you a couple of the materials that we're going to use. This stuff is by Spirit River. It's freely available all across the States and right throughout Australia. It's pseudo seals fur dubbing, and as you can see, it's got a lot of life to it, a lot of glint there. Stuff that's going to attract a little bit of sunlight and hopefully attract a few more fish to the fly. We're going to use a little bit of the chartreuse for the base of the body, and then go into a darker green for up at the head, and we might even put a little bit of flash into it. I'm going to show you a simple way to dub rather than creating dubbing loops and all that sort of stuff. And the secret, how you make it work, is to use little bits. Just have a look how much fluff I've got there. Hardly any. For this maneuver, we just use little bits. It's hard to practice this because for some reason, everybody I've ever shown to do this, they always grab more than what they need. Grab what you think's necessary, then cut it in half. Give yourself a break. Little bits. You can always build and design your fly as you go. If you put a lot of dubbing on, you are committed to it, and honestly, you'll find that you won't get the tapers that you're really looking for. Let's start. What we do is we just simply place it on, and I'm going to roll the dubbing between my finger and thumb, and I'm going to press with my index finger against the ball of my thumb, and that's going to really pull that stuff tight onto the thread. Sometimes if you get a little lick, that also packs it in a little bit tighter. I got that on nice and tight. We can wind that around now, starting right back here at the base, slowly winding forward. You notice now that we've started directly above the barb, right in the spot we should. As we get further along, grab a little bit more, but I'm not going to put this one on as tight. I'm just going to put a couple of turns there so that it's a little bit looser, so that we can pick out some threads as we go along. The finished fly will look nice and shaggy. Little fibers of the pseudo seal's fur sticking out everywhere. That's about it for the chartreuse. We'll put a little bit more on, just a little bit more. That'll do. See, they're starting to stick out already. Good looking stuff. Now, we're going to get a little bit of the darker green. Just to two-tone this a little bit. I don't know if it makes all that much difference to the fish, but by golly, it pleases the eye, and I suppose if it looks good to you, you're going to fish it a bit better, aren't you? A little bit more confident, saying, hey, come on, fish, you're mine. Now, the more we pack that in there, the tighter that's going to force the little gold bead up against the eye of the hook. And as you can see, that there is now quite firm. We don't need much more than that. We can get our whip finishing tool, the Matarelli, open it up. The reason I like the Matarellis is that you're not just working on the eye. We've got to tie off behind the gold bead here. So we get our Matarelli and simply a few turns in behind. There we go. And do one more turn just to lock it all into place. And that will really pack up and hold that little gold bead head firmly in place. And we can just pick out a little bit of this dubbing, just a little bit, just to make the fly a little bit more bushier. And there we have a simple little gold beadhead saltwater nymph. Colors, you can make any color combinations you want. If you want to put a silver bead on, you can. If you want to put a black tungsten bead on, you can. We've been, through our experiments here, we've been finding that the gold bead head's better than the others. And I suppose this can vary with the color combinations that you want to do. If you want to do all white or something like that, you can put a silver bead on just to let it blend in and make it a little bit more natural looking, you know. It's a simple little fly to make. Doesn't take very long at all. Highly effective. Best thing I can say to you is tie one up and give it a try. What I want to show you quickly before we move on to this segment is a deep sinking version. What I actually do is apply 3 gold bead heads, getting smaller as they go down the shank. So I've got one of the large ones here, which would be about a 6 mil. I'm going to go to a 4 mil and then about a 3 mil down the back end. But what we've got to do is we've got to work backwards with this one, guys, which makes it a little bit more difficult, but it's not impossible to do, I can assure you. I've just put a large one on, and we'll tie some thread on, right close up to the bead. Cut away the surplus. Take a little of the pseudo green seal's fur, just a little bit. Open up your thread a piece. Loosely dub it on. Fabulous way of dubbing once you get used to it. Put that on like so. Maybe just a whisker more. It's the beauty of doing these little bits. I don't think I can emphasize that enough. Little bits of the trick with this. Now, what we've got to do is play it cunning. At this stage, we tie off. Just once, that's all that's needed. Remove our silk, remove the hook from the vise, and grab a bead, slightly smaller. Insert that on, place the hook back in the vise, and push it right up as close as you can. And then tie your silk on in front, right in tight against the bead to help support it in place. Now that we've got that locked in, we can go back to our chartreuse, grab a little bit more, once again, little bits. Would you believe I originally developed this fly to get down deep freshwater fishing? And it works well, but not in these colors. We just do them in the natural browns or the hares here type color, and they work very, very well. Get down fast. You've got to duck your head while you're casting with the critters, because if they whack you in the back of the neck, you know it. Tie off again. Remove the silk, get another one. I'm going to go for one roughly around about the same size on this, just to add that little bit more weight. Push it through the small hole. There's a little bit of resistance there. There we go. We've got it on. Place that back into our vise again. Add the silk. And this is where you start running out of room. As you can see, we're pretty well close back to our starting point. That's why we've got to now push everything right up and get right in against the base of the last bead. Because now what we do is we get a little bit of tail here, which is once again the calf tail. Just get a few fibers. Just a few. Measure them out. Sit them on there. Tie them in. Just remove the stubs, the unwanted stubs that we don't want. Now we get a little bit more dubbing, just a little bit. Add that. Spread it out a little bit. Really all we want this for now is to cover up the brown silk at the back here and put it on loose to make it a little bit shaggy when we get our dubbing needle onto that. And we don't want that pushing the tail down. We want our tail standing out nice and straight. A couple of turns, hook off, and a couple more turns on there, like so. Hook off, and we are in business. The silk's pretty well protected by the beads. And now we can afford to get our needle in and just pinch out a few of those fibers just to give it that shaggy appearance that we were talking about. Don't pick up your threads while you're doing this. Just get the surface hairs just to give it a little bit more shaggy look. Maybe that's adding what all fly tyers want to do with their flies, is create that little bit of life, you know. Try and make your flies look alive. Here we go. And they're all locked into place. Beautiful. Does it sink? Whoa, real fast. Okay, and there it is. 3 gold beads on a little fly that I call triple gold. It swims well, which is important, and it's just got that added little bit of attraction. I think one of its major benefits is that it's highly durable for those toothy critters. Now, these little baitfish, they're absolutely everywhere. One of the common names for them is surf candies, but to be honest with you, yeah, I think it's a great little name, but it covers a multitude of sins because it covers a lot of baits. Let me show you how they're done. Lock her away. What we're going to use is, we're going to use wool. There is nothing more natural than wool. And it's got, excuse me, let's grab our thread and place this on the hook shank. Here we go. Whoa, taking it back just like we showed you earlier to above the barb. Just like so. What we're going to use for a body here is a little bit of fishing nylon. Now this is the chartreuse color, and as you know, if you've been hanging around the tackle shops like I do, what do they call those guys out? We call them tackle rats out here. I don't know what you guys call them over there, but we call them tackle rats here in Australia. You just get to see all this stuff, and a few meters of it goes a long, long way. Simply place the fishing nylon. I've selected chartreuse in this instance. You can get them in hot pinks, you get them in clear, and an earthy greenish colour. As you know, it comes through in all sorts of different colours. Just going to be secured on so that it is locked into place and not going to come away. Good few wraps. Notice how close I'm holding the tip of the bobbin holder to the hook, within that 2 or 3 inches. This way I maintain that tension that's really, really needed. I've only taken the silk up to just past the 3/4 of the hook shank length. Very, very important. I've got to leave room at the eye here to be able to tie off all the fibres and build up a little bit of a head. And I don't want to choke the eye of the hook in doing so. Let's bring this around and start. Here we go. Keep those wraps nice and close together. Closer they are, the better it looks. Notice how the white thread underneath helps throw the colour of the fishing nylon. Almost there. Come up to around about the 2/3 mark. Then we can tie off. Notice I'm holding the material up in the air. This way I can put some wraps of silk around there at the base of it without it getting in the way. I can now cut that off. Leave a little bit of a tag, just a little bit, so that you can wrap and bind that in and make it very, very secure. There we go. That's done that. Now what we're going to do is get a little bit of white wool. The colours I'm going to use is white. I've got this beautiful little olivey, dark, beautiful olivey green here. It's lovely. I'm going to use a little bit of the darker for over the back, and I got a little bit of crystal flash to go over the top, just to give it that little bit of life. So let's have a look at it. Here we go. A little bit of white. A little bit of white over the top. We don't want this one too long, because each piece that we're going to add to this now, we're going to make it a little bit progressively longer. So let's just tie that in so that it's nice and neat, just like that. There we go. Got a little bit of fluff there. Pull that back and tie it in so that we cover it up. Let's come right back down to the base of our body. There we go. That piece is in. Let's get a little bit more here. It's a green. Take a little bit of this off. That over the top, just a whisker longer. Let's cut that off and trim it all in. Now what I want to do is just a little bit of this darker one, just to come over the back end of the fly, so that it gives that image of light, dark, darker. Just a whisker of it. There we go. Tie that in. Now finally what we need now is just a little bit of this crystal hair, crystal flash, crystal hair. Just tie that in over the top. That's going to give it that extra bit of life. Now let's build up a head here so that we can get some shape. Here we go. So that we can get some little eyes on this. Then that's just about right. Let's open up our silk a little bit. Grab our Matarelli with finishing tool. Tie off. We don't have to put a lot of turns on this, because a little bit later we're going to be putting an epoxy resin over the top of the head of this fly, And as you will see, that's one of the feature segments of this video. It's all about epoxies and soft body flies and all that sort of stuff. There we go. Look at that. As pretty as a picture. Now, one other little thing we need to do is stick some little stick-on eyes on the sides of the fly here, and we can come back a little later, as I said, and do the epoxy trick. So, get our dubbing needle and hook one out. Fortunately, these things are very user-friendly. They've been pre-cut out, which means you can simply get one, take it off, it's on a sticky back, just go zap, grab another one. You definitely need a needle to do this, to lift it away from the adhesion. There we go. Put that one on the other side. Take the fly out of the vise. Yep. Push them together. They stick a little bit more. And a little bit later in the course, when we get into that resin, I can put some epoxy over that, and that'll seal them there forever and a day. What we've got as far as the colors go again, it's all wool. We've got white, we've got chartreuse, a little bit of dark green on the top, and a little bit of olive crystal hair over the top of that again. A white thread head, as you can see, little silver eyes, and chartreuse fishing line for the body. Favorite color of mine, chartreuse. Good stuff. One thing we've got out here in Australia is a lot of sharks. And sharks just love a little bit of burley. What you guys call chum or chumming, we call burley over here, but it's exactly the same thing. We'll get the big pot out of the back of the boat and put some dead fish in it, or fish oil, or bits of offal or whatever, and mix it all up and just let that trail dangle out the back of the boat and pull in those sharks, mate. When they come in, pooh.
He took that on the fly. That's the interesting
What we've got out here is we've got a coastline that is thick with what you guys call sardines. We call them pilchards, you call them sardines. Beautiful little bait fish. They grow up to around about that size maximum. Now, one of the tricks we do with these guys is put them in the burley pot, munch them up, let it drift down the trail. Frequently, there's large lumps of this stuff goes out. So, we come up with the idea that just maybe if we tied up a fly representing a piece of that sardine, old Mr. Finn with the sharp teeth, he'd come up and have a go at it. Have a look at these little tickers. A little bit of entrails hanging out the side there. Not much of the body left, a little bit hanging over the back. It just drifts down in the chum line. And the job's over. Thank you very much. Let me show you how to make it. Okay, we've got a big hook on this one, guys. Simple reason is they're big fish, so you need to put a mouthful of steel in there that's going to hang on. I'm using a Gamakatsu 6.0, chemically sharpened, high carbon hook. Alright, so what we're going to do first off is put a thread on exactly the same way as we've always done, starting a little bit down towards the back end of the hook, almost opposite the bob. Cut away the waste. Now we're going to, first of all, we're going to tie in a little bit of the entrail. So what I'm going to use for that, the little bit of flashy red stuff coming out the back, is Polar Air Red. Love this stuff. It's a Spirit River product, and it has just got so much life to it. Well, I suppose in this instance, don't know if you could call it life, if it's a little bit of a gut line coming out the back of our fly. But here we go. Let's tie a little bit of this. With that, I'm going to fold that back over on itself now. You're watching? Here we go. That just makes it a little bit thicker in the start, getting thinner as we go back. There you go. Now we're going to put on some crystal flash. What I've got here is a little bit with a blue tinge, pale blue tinges, as pretty as a picture. Like I said earlier, this stuff comes in all sorts of colors, and it just adds that little bit of life to the fly. I'm just going to get this and let's have a look here, just layer it out. I don't like it all that even. I don't want it even. Some bits longer and some bits shorter. It's just going to add to what the fly is all about. Let's just shorten that up a bit so we can maintain our tension. And away we go. Tie that in, just down on top. That's got that. There we go. I'm going to run a line of thread along the shank so that the rest of the materials we're going to add on here have got something to grip on. Try to avoid, if possible, tying any material onto the bare shank of the hook because it has that tendency to slip, and you don't want that happening to your flies. The base of the body I'm going to make out of white wool. It's a fabulous medium to work with, and it's very light, and it creates bulk without weight. So you can get a wide-bodied fly without any weight. Makes it easier to cast. Think about it. It's not going to wrap around your ear as easily as something that weighs a half an ounce. Because this stuff here is as light as light can be. What we do is we get a bunch of it like so. I'm going to cut that off again. There we are. Now, so a little bit like spinning deer hair. What you do is you splay it around your hook. Wrap it around like so. Open up your thread a little. 1, 2 turns. There you go. Pull your fibers back. Bring the silk forward and wrap it in front. Right up tight against the base of the wool so that packs into it and helps it stand upright, just like it's doing there. Let's get this little bit now that we cut off, and we will face the butt ends of that back in against the base of the other one, and take our silk around once, twice, back again, close. See what's starting to happen? We're starting to get a bulky sort of body here, which we can trim into the shape this later on. Make this fly. Look like a real sit that down. Blend right in. It's good stuff. This well, very good. 2 to 3 inches. And you set it up. Concentrating to know. So we're going to do that in one little bit later. With this wall, get mold in. Get that we'll do now is we'll create like a little cheek of this, just so that we can set the eye on. We try to stick an eye on this wall. You can It's not going to last very, very long at all. So if we prepare a little base for it, something like a shape of a teardrop, then before we start to tie this on to the side of the fly, we can get one of these larger stick-on eyes. Let's put our thread back on so that we can now introduce the eye. And that can then be tied on to the side of the fly. And that's going to look pretty good. What I'm going to do now is just trim this down sort of tag. And we stick that one on the side. Saltwater fly tying is all about the range of flies needed, the range of types of flies required for you to be able to take anywhere on any fishing trip you may go to in Australia. And of course, New Zealand, anywhere in the world really. It's not difficult to do. Matter of fact, it's a little bit easier than some of the a little bit more complicated methods we use in freshwater fly tying, but it's a lot of fun. It'll give you the opportunity to expand your horizons, be able to go into fish areas that you've never even dreamed of before. Give it a go. Have a lot of fun. Good on you. I want to tell you a story. A few months ago, a friend of mine, Steve Cooper,